Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles people who are passionate about what they do for a living, what organization they belong to, or the community they are a part of. Here is your host, Dave Cunningham.
Thanks, Steve. Hello, everyone, and welcome. If you're looking to get some sense of the history of the city of Kingston, you can read a book or attend a lecture. Or if you happen to also be a Facebook user, you can scroll through thousands of pictures and documents that track that history. From the roadways and big industry that used to be, to the buildings and landmarks that still are, the Vintage Kingston Facebook page is the place to visit. This episode features a conversation with the man who keeps adding to the memories. His name is Bill Stevenson. Bill Stevenson, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you, David, for having me here. Or here. Well, not here. Virtually here.
Virtually here. If anyone goes on Facebook, they will notice that there are a bajillion pages to flip through to draw your interest. And there is one that I think that if you live in the city of Kingston or have lived in the city of Kingston, you'll want to go to this one, because this one is history by scrolling. There are all kinds of things in there, and Bill is the fellow that started up one called Vintage Kingston, and it's a page on Facebook. So all you have to do is look up Vintage Kingston. And can you give us an overview of what the page is?
Well, it's basically memories of Kingston, I would say. Like, I do a lot of researching, looking through old newspaper clippings, magazines. I'll pick up tourist booklets, stuff like that, to get pictures of events that have happened in Kingston. I try to get a lot of the more recent ones, today there was the ad for 13 Acres opening in 1977, but it goes back to the original drawings done by a Lady Simcoe in the late 1700s. Pictures of Queen's University from the 1880s and 90s. The old streetcars that used to run down Princess Street, Queen Street. They went all the way out to Lake Ontario Park when it was the end of the line, where people would go for dancing and just to enjoy the summer evenings, and before there was AC and stuff. And up Princess Street, I live in the area called Williamsville, and that was sort of where the streetcar stopped at that point. I used to go up Montreal Street as well. It started as a horse-drawn, and then went into electric ones, and it stopped in the 1930s after there was a big fire, and we got the buses that we have now.
There's all kinds of things here. And I guess what we'll do is we'll reiterate this a couple of times during our conversation. And that's just a little note to folks who go to the page. Don't just look at the posts. Go up to the top where it says photos, and you'll see all sorts of albums that Bill has put together on different categories. And that is the place to go. And it's for anyone who's lived in Kingston any length of time, it's a great place to go to get some history. Now, why don't you tell us where this idea came from? Is this something you thought of, or you saw it done somewhere else, or how did that all start?
Originally, a friend of mine who lives in California posted a couple of interesting shots of Los Angeles, vintage Los Angeles pictures from the 50s, the diners and that. And I started Vintage Toronto, because I grew up in Toronto from the time I was 2.5 till I came to go to Queens. And the original envisioning of the poster of the page was going to be posts about, Toronto in the 70s, like Sam the Record Man and Yonge Street. And then I started finding historical pictures of the same buildings. And after that, it seemed obvious that, seeing as I'd moved out of Toronto to go to Queens, I'd lived here longer than I ever lived in Toronto, that Vintage Kingston was the way to go. And again, it was like pictures of you just mentioned the albums. I think the Princess Street, I think I call it Princess Street downtown because it has Brock Street on it as well and stops at about Division. There's probably about 400 pictures in that album alone of, parades, old stores, just protests, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at a building like the Toucan downtown, which before it was the Toucan, was the Dockyard. Before that, it was the Kings. And it goes back to, I think what the name of the hotel was that was in there, but it was a hotel going back into the early 1800s. So just trying to blank on the name of the hotel right now, because there were a ton of hotels in downtown Kingston.
I think the thing is that if you have lived in Kingston or anywhere for that matter, when construction takes place and a new building goes up, it's really easy to forget what was there before. And this is the kind of thing that reminds you. Now, like you said, there are 400 pictures or documents in one category alone. Where do you get all of these things, or do people send them to you? Or
Well, I get some sent. There was one today from a ticket for a football game between Frontenac and KC that someone attended in 1969. So that was sent to me a couple of days ago. There were a couple of sport teams that were sent to me as well. So, I'm always willing to take any contributions that people have, memories and stuff, as well. I go through I can find them, if I ever find old yearbooks and stuff, I pick those up. I pick up, history books on Kingston. Actually some people have sent me, which is kind of interesting, some people have been renovating houses and they found old issues, old pages, not the full paper, but pages that were used as sort of lining in cupboards or drawers or
insulation,
carpet. So they send those in, and that's where I get things like movie, what movies were playing at the Capitol or the Tivoli or whatever theaters, the Highland, at various points of times, and pictures of visits from the royal visits or other politicians coming to town from all the way back to the royal visits that go back into the early 1900s through to FDR's visit when he was at Queen's and received the honorary degree. Certainly more recent politicians from numerous pictures of Flora MacDonald, who seemed to never shy away from publicity. Keith Norton, Ken Keyes, and then a lot of the ones that really get the interest are, which I get from newspapers and essays from people sending them in, or like old menus and stuff from restaurants that have gone, Jenny B. Good's, Aunt Lucy's, some still going like Copper Penny, but of course, Baba's, they've been around for 30, 40 years. So there's changes.
Now, you work for a living still. You're sell real estate. Now, how much time do you spend on your hobby here?
Well, I usually spend about an hour and a half a day kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty well every day. I'm always looking for stuff. I just, so we just mentioned real estate. A house that sold recently, the seller called me and said, well, it was an estate sale, but she had a bunch of Whig standards from 1967, the centennial issue. Yeah. So she gave them to me. They're not in great shape, but I found some great ads and stuff in it. And I posted the other day an aerial shot of Alcan that was on the page from 1967. So.
And it's that kind of thing that brings back memories. And you mentioned Alcan. When I was going to Queens, I worked at Alcan for 3 summers. So a picture of Alcan, because it doesn't exist in the same format it used to exist in, brings back memories of the time I was working in this area or that area and handling golf club shafts in Alcan and doing things like that.
There's a number of pictures of Alcan from a lot of the female workers during World War II doing casings for bombs or propellers for the airplanes, because it was quite big industry, and with most of the men serving overseas.
Let's talk specifics about a few things that you have posted in different sections. One of them would be buildings. You did mention 13 acres, which was a post that you put up earlier today.
Yeah,
and this is a place that was on a Development Drive.
Yeah.
And I can remember it more so as being Studio 801, and it was a roller skating rink.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a roller skating rink right from the beginning. It's 13 acres. That was 77. I think it became Studio 801 around 80 or 81. And then I think the final name was Celebrity Sports World.
Right.
And it changed a little bit over the years. They added what do you call it, mini golf. They added on the outside. The roller skating was the one that was a constant there.
Yeah.
And it was a great place for teens to hang out all the way from, obviously 77 to, not sure what year it closed. It was still there in the early 2000s, but.
No, it was dismantled or taken down, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still a big vacant lot.
That's the question, you being a real estate guy. Why is it still vacant? You would think it'd be prime property.
Yes, I think for a long time it was for sale, but only the owner of the land wanted to keep it and would develop it for whoever wanted to lease it. And sometimes those are tougher to sell. I mean, Kingston doesn't have the industry it once did, and that's a zoned industrial area. So I think that's, we've got lots of new housing and stuff going on, but industry, unfortunately, too much of our stuff that, you look at all the, speaking of things that have disappeared, all the factories that used to be in Kingston. From, the long Development Drive and certainly up Montreal Street, Rideau Street there, the old tannery and stuff that are all gone now. So that's a major change we have in Kingston.
Let's go downtown. Dollar Bills was in there at one point.
Yeah, Dollar Bills replaced I guess if you go far enough before my time, but my older sister also went to Queens, and she said they would never go near the Prince George bar. At the time she was in Kingston, it was called the Indian Room. And I guess it was pretty rough and tumble bar. I think it was started to change when the Russos took it over. I would say that was probably around 73. Mm-hmm. And they developed the dollar bills, and it went through a number of changes. When I first arrived in Kingston, you could see some really good blues artists played there, some of the up and coming rock bands from Toronto. Billy. Then it's sort of, I hate to say it, but I think they realized they could make more money by just having it as DJs and stuff. So then it went into more DJs and dance floor stuff, and they lost a lot of the crowd that went to Dollar Bills as it was, but I mean, it gained a lot of the young students going there. I just posted one the other day of I think it was called Beach Slam. It was like every Monday night. They had removed the wood from the dance floor, and it was sand underneath it, and they had like a mechanical bull, and played, Beach Boys and all that kind of music. So
now the point I was trying to make was Dollar Bills, the bar was named after a real person, right? There's a post that I saw somewhere. What's the story on the real person? The
real person, Dollar Bill, I can't remember his last name. I think it was Bill Allen, if I recall. He arrived in Kingston in the 1920s. He worked as a waiter, as a bar, and then he sort of became a smuggler and a bootlegger, and he ran a sort of less unofficial bar over in Berryfield. I think he died in there about just after World War II, but he was quite the character downtown. I mean, everyone knew who he was, and I think they turned a blind eye on the fact that he was smuggling stuff during the Prohibition era. There's always a story that there was I've never, everyone says there's an underground tunnel from the PG to the lake. I don't know if there is or not. I've never seen it, but it's the story. But then again, you look at that old water tower by the Queens West campus, and I know when I first got there, that was where they used to do the hangings.
That's a story that went around for ages.
Yeah.
And every city has to have its share of characters to make the city, I think.
for sure.
Queens, there's an ad I noticed in there for Queens opening up in 1842.
Yeah, it opened up on Colburn Street in 1842. The house is still there. It's just a little frame house. It's got a little plaque on it. I'd say it's right. I think it's it's close to Berry Street on the north side of it. I remember an article in the Whig at one point saying that the people who owned it were fixing it up. I think this was in the 80s. There was an old well in it. They started cleaning out the well. They found all sorts of old liquor bottles. So obviously drinking in Queens go back to the very beginning. Like to dump them down the well.
The section I found interesting as well was the people section, people that bring back memories. The first picture I noticed in one of your albums was Max Jackson. And he's a fellow. When I was in radio, I worked with Max, and he was one of those characters who was so dedicated to local sports. He would be up in the morning to do radio sports around 6, and he would be coming back and forth to end up doing the television sports at 11:15 or whatever time it was.
Yeah, actually, one of the posts on Max Jackson has his schedule with CKWS. And basically, he worked. I don't know how he must have gotten about 5 hours sleep a night.
if that.
So he started really early and finished late. So
another fellow who came to town that some people may have forgotten, that's Lorne Green.
Lorne Green was a Queen student.
Yeah.
While he was a student, he worked. He was one of the announcers on CFRC radio, which is, I don't know if people are familiar, it's actually the oldest continuously running station in Canada. He, after Queens, he went to work for CBC, and during World War II, his nickname was the Voice of Doom, because he kept talking about all the battles and deaths of Canadians. That was way before he going to Hollywood, going into like the Bonanza, or the other movies he was in.
See, that's a show that most people wouldn't know, because you have to be of a certain age to remember that show. But I can remember he came to Kingston, I think it must have been in the 70s, to get an honorary degree, because he did pay a second visit back to CFRC.
CFRC radio on that. There is a picture on the page of him at CFRC during the visit. I'm going to say it may have been around the same time as the tricentenary.
It could, would be in the 70s, I believe, because the manager at the time was Andrew Marshall. And I can remember I was involved with CFRC when I was a student during that era. I didn't see Lorne, but I knew that he came. Another fellow you've mentioned is FDR. So he came to Queens to get an honorary degree, and he went over to the Thousand Islands Bridge.
Yeah, it was the opening of the Thousand Islands Bridge, which brought him to this area. And then he came in, got an honorary degree at Queens. There's a picture of him. And actually, I have a picture that's coming up in the next couple of days of him actually receiving the degree. Hasn't made it to the page yet. You mentioned how I probably have a couple of thousand pictures that haven't made the page already. So I try to post. I don't like to do the overkill, so I usually only do about 4 posts a day.
Right.
Morning. So if I have time in the morning, sometimes I don't get there until the afternoon. Now there's also a secondary page now, because I found a lot of people had questions about Kingston, and the questions I don't know the answers to. Mm-hmm. So I started a page, a Vintage Kingston group page, where people can, ask questions, or they'll run into people they haven't seen since we were in grade 4 together at Victoria Public School, and,
right?
Or does anyone remember what was there at this location in 1978?
Now you mentioned the fact that you have thousands of pictures yet to post. Yeah. Do you keep the originals once you've posted them?
Well, a lot of it I get off the internet. I mean,
right.
Yes,
okay.
But I have boxes of postcards. I have all these books and stuff like that. So yeah, all those ones I have the originals. Other ones just wherever I can find them. So a lot of it's from microfilm online posts and stuff. And sometimes they're pretty tiny. I have to do the best I can to bring them up to, at least a visible.
Right. Exactly. Sometimes that's not easy. Now, someone else who came to Kingston more than once, and that's Queen Elizabeth. And as we record this conversation, it happens to be her 95th birthday. And it's just shortly after the passing of her husband, Prince Philip. The two of them came to town several times. Do you have an idea how many times they came to Kingston?
Offhand, no, I don't.
Okay.
I know
more than once.
81. I got pictures from 73, pictures from the 60s. I haven't actually totaled how many, which one there, but I think there is one of the albums is called Royal Visits. So, so count them up. They're easy to do. It's pretty easy to do.
Now, what I didn't know was that her father and mother came to town, King George VI and his wife, Queen Elizabeth. And when were they here in the
I think it was
late 30s?
Yeah, late 30s, pre-World War I, or World War II, obviously. So they weren't doing a lot. They weren't sending them over in ships in World War II.
Yeah.
But I think 1937 was when they were here.
Okay.
So, before my time.
One of the things I was intrigued about with respect to the posters advertising concerts was the price that people were asked to pay for the show. And I noticed a couple. One was Burton Cummings in 1976, and I believe the Bee Gees came to the Memorial Center, and the price of admission was $5.
Yeah. Yes, concerts have gone
just a little higher.
Yes, it's I know it's like
that's the not the game, but I mean, there's a lot of interest these days online about recounting some of the concerts that came to the Memorial Center, because for the longest time it was the only place to play in terms of concerts and
large size in Kingston.
Yeah, I can remember I heard about the Who appearing in Kingston and at the Memorial Center.
And there is a ticket stub of that one.
Right. Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Yeah.
Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Because I emceed that show. That's why I remember it, because I actually remember the show. A whole pile of other people. And, obviously at one particular point, they tended to move over to the Jock Hardy Arena because maybe the acoustics were better there than the Memorial Center. And nowadays, the Leon Center appears to be the place to go for a lot of the big shows, and a lot of the big names are coming, even though it's a small arena compared to some of the others that they can go to. And they will form part of the history going forward as you start to collect ticket stubs of more recent stuff, or posters of more recent stuff. So your favorites among some of the stuff that you've seen over the last few years. But give me a couple.
Well, I can tell you one that we're mentioning Alcan. Of course, the other big industry in Kingston for a long time was DuPont down there on the waterfront. I found one that was very interesting. Somebody sent in, this was quite a few years ago, but it's in the album of that area. The farmhouse that was there and the farmers before DuPont was built. And then there's pictures like horse-pulled roller flattening out Queen Street in 1910. I find lots of pictures of like the Wolf Islander, the old Wolf. Well, there's going to be a new one soon, but the one before the current one. Basically, the waterfront, the changes in it as well. Fort Henry, going back into when it was actually not a tourist attraction, when there were still soldiers there, and then the deterioration of the fort. Pretty fascinating to see the way the walls had collapsed before they rebuilt it in the 30s. And then there's a lot of pictures from, it's called Vintage Kingston, but it covers the area as well. So there'd be pictures of, Napanee and Amherstfield going up north to like places like, I've got a great shot of, everyone's been up Highway 38, the intersection in Harrowsmith with 1900. A lot of great pictures of the old steamships, steamers going up the Rideau Canal in the early 1900s.
There's lots of interesting stuff, and I urge everybody who is on Facebook to flip over. There's a lot of nonsense on Facebook, I'm sure, but this is not one of those pages. There's a lot of history there, and it'll bring back a lot of memories. Trust me, when you see buildings, downtown particularly, that have been there a long time.
Princess Street, great pictures of like parades and stuff like that, and celebrations of the end of World War to all the people dancing in the streets. So,
Now, you've got a picture of the traffic circle, do you not?
oh, I sent several pictures of the traffic circle, aerial shots, which was a postcard showing where Alcan came off at the signs, basically saying Toronto this way, Montreal that way. Who cared about anything else?
Now, for those of us who remember the traffic circle, and we try to explain what it was to folks who don't remember it or have not lived through it, and basically for those people who were young, had their own vehicles, they would cruise down Princess Street, back up Queen, up to Princess, go around the traffic circle and back down again. And they would just repeat that, go in that circle over and over and over again. Lots of stuff there. And I want to thank you very much for your time today to tell us a little bit about your hobby, which seems to be taking over your life. And good luck with your future endeavors, and we will be looking through those pages and reliving some of the history of Kingston.
I would say, if anyone has pictures they think belong in the vintage Kingston, they're welcome to email them to me or just post them on the page as a message, and I can usually get them up there.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks. Bye now.
Bye-bye. Bill Stevenson was our guest today. He is the creator and custodian of the Vintage Kingston Facebook page. This episode was recorded in late April 2021 using Zoom.
The theme music for the podcast is Stasis Oasis, written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of the episodes, please send a note to thekingstonianpodcast@gmail.com. For details on upcoming guests, follow us on Facebook. The Kingstonian Podcast is hosted by Dave Cunningham and produced in Kingston, Ontario, Canada.